Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajim. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamu alaikum, my dear students. I'm sure you must be fine and learning wherever you are. Just to link the chain, we are studying the research skills. In our last lecture, we discussed the sequence of a research task. That's very, very important. Just to recapitulate, how do we proceed to undertake a research task? So first of all, we identify the problem, we clearly define it, we then formulate a hypothesis or an idea. We then go and collect the data, we organize it, analyze it, and after that, we draw certain conclusions. Once the conclusions are drawn, then we verify our conclusions, and this verification may demand certain amendments, incorporation of plus or minus some modifications, and even rejection of certain conclusions that we had drawn. And after this process, we again formulate the fresh conclusion. Then we launch a prototype experiment, whatever we learned through this research sequence. To see it practically on ground, we test it at a very small level, and again, wherever the flaws occurred, or wherever the things appeared to be impracticable, we incorporate changes in that, and then our research work is complete, and whatever has now been completed, that becomes a general rule. It's still not a specific rule, it's a generalized set of rules or principles or guidelines which we can use for the future. So that was in a nutshell as far as the sequence is concerned. In our today's lecture, we'll go ahead with the different skills or methods or approaches of research work. Every problem or every objective for which we want to carry out research, it demands a different method to be applied. So basically, there are three categories of such like methods. If you look towards the slide, the three methods are given there. It says classification of research. First is research by purpose. We have a specific purpose for which we want to dig out or sift the facts and truth that we studied in our definition. Second is by method. Generally, we'll talk about the methods, and when we talk about the method, there are certain methods which suit a certain specific skill. The others may not suit that at all. They can even overlap. One method may be useful for two other types. It's not essentially bound to be strictly applied only to one kind of research. So that's research by purpose. We keep a purpose in mind and then we select the other things and we proceed ahead. Research can be classified by its methods also. But there's not one single method, as I said. If you remember the objectives of research, there are different types. We carry out research for the things that already exist or for the accepted facts which are already there in our knowledge, in our world, in our contemporary utilization. But they may be demanding some more clarifications, some more sifting. It may be some other concept that needs to be revised, modified, or amended or updated. We may require some other research to propound a new theory or to discover something new that has already not been done. Also, yet another dimension, we may like to sift certain information from the pages of the history. Now, history is a very big source of knowledge, and it's a big source of misperceptions also. So, the knowledge that has been stocked by the history, it needs to be sifted. That may be our different method. The third classification, research can be classified in view of its approaches. What are these approaches? We are going to discuss them in detail in our coming lectures. So today we'll commence with the first type of classification, and that is the research by purpose. Research by purpose, it says, you can apply the methods that have been given in this slide. I'll just read them out for you, and then we'll discuss them one by one. We have already had a glance over these methods, but now we'll give them a thorough treatment so that you understand what do we really entail or connote when we talk about the purposes, the methods. For research by purpose, we can use the basic research method. It can be applied research, it can be evaluation research, it can be research and development, and it can be action research. So, there are a number of things that we want to find out when we carry out research or classify it under this heading, research by purpose. Let's move ahead. Now, here is the definition or the purpose or a little more explanation which you will be able to understand and have a better concept of the research by purpose. It says, classification of research by purpose is based primarily on the degree to which findings have direct application and the degree which they are generalizable to other situations. Now here you are clearly understanding the keywords that I spoke to you in our previous lecture. The key word in the slide is, it's by purpose. It's based on primarily the degree to which the findings have direct application. So, direct application is one thing, this is the key word, and the degree with which they are generalizable. They should not be sticking only to one problem. They may be used for the other identical situations or familiar situations with the same problem. So it's a multi-purpose research, specifically achieving one purpose and generally usable or helpful for the other purposes. Let's see what methods we can use for research by purpose. The types of research methods that we can apply for the research by purpose, as we had seen in the slide. The first method that we can use is basic research method. What's this? Basic research method. It involves the process of collecting and analyzing data or information to develop or enhance a theory. Now here we stop. As I said, when we are studying and moving ahead in this study, things may be apparently repeating themselves, but remember, they have their own corridors, they have their own aims, they have their own purposes, and their application is different in different situations. So here also, when we are talking about the basic research, remember that it starts with the collection of data and information about some theory, or to further explore a theory that is already existing. If you read the second part, it says, in its purest form, basic research is conducted solely for the purpose of theory development and refinement. Now here are the key words which very clearly give you the idea of basic research. It says it's conducted solely, absolutely, totally, not for anything else, but for the purpose of development of a theory or refinement of the theory. Either we develop a new theory or a theory that's already existing, we refine that. There are so many things which is yet required to be explored. There are so many things about which still no theory has been propounded. For example, pollution today is the biggest problem of the universe. It is being addressed as a problem, as a very harmful factor to pollute our atmosphere, our air. It's posing unmanageable dangers to our health, our working conditions. The buildings even are not safer from this pollution. The houses, food, edibles, dress, day-to-day life, even our transport. So, no proper theory has still been propounded. And there are tremendous articles, hue and cry in the whole world, people talking about pollution, But yet a project is to be undertaken in letter and spirit to formulate a theory about this pollution, and then how can we overcome that? When we say theory, it means what are the basic factors that are contributing towards the pollution? Where are they coming from? The natural scenario is being disturbed. How is it being disturbed? What is the element that is causing damage to the buildings? What are the elements? What are the factors which are very severely and seriously threatening the human health and the vegetables and the forest or the jungle life, the animal life, and things like that? So if we undertake this project for our research, that will be a basic research. How our crops are being damaged by various things, whom we always say it's just a calamity, it's just a fate. It was to happen. It doesn't happen really. Everything has always got a cause or reason behind it, or many reasons. So to propound theory for these things, for the basic knowledge, basic knowing, we use the basic research method, and then we proceed ahead. Let's see the other slide. The second method that we can use for the classification of research by purpose is the applied research. Now, as the word itself says, applied, so we'll be able to understand its meaning too. Let's read this slide, which will put you more clear. It says, is conducted for the purpose of applying or testing theory and evaluating its usefulness in solving problems. My dear students, when you study something, in my previous lecture, I pointed out the keywords. Today, remember another tip. It will facilitate your study also. There are warning words also. Now, warning word means when this word appears, the meaning will follow it. After this word, the meaning of the terminology will be there, or the meaning of the statement or the definition will be there. For example, in this slide, you see, it says it's conducted for the purpose. Now, the purpose is a warning word. It means after this, he'll tell you what for is the applied research. And when he says purpose of applying or testing theory and evaluating its usefulness in solving problems. A theory is already existing. It has been formulated. We now apply it and we test it physically on ground, and we see its usefulness for the problems for which this theory has been propounded. We had studied a bit of it when we were talking about the sequence. So it's that point where the theory has been already completed and the method is basically for applying it practically and seeing its practicability on its usefulness for the problems for which it has been propounded. Let's proceed further. Applied research provides data to support theory. Now remember, the first thing that it does is it tells us whether it will be useful for the problems for which it has been propounded. The second thing is, once we apply it practically on ground, it will provide us some information, and that will be our data. So, it provides data to support the theory, first thing, guide the theory, or revise the theory, or suggest development of new theory. It's very simple, it's not very complicated, and we should understand it in very simple words. You have found, you have propounded, finalized, concluded one theory. Now you practically try to test it, and when you test it, you see its usefulness or the problems which are created by it, and then accordingly that data is maneuvered or used for modifying it, for revising it, for incorporating certain changes, or for rejecting it altogether and having a new theory. So the word application of a method or a theory and testing it practically on ground should be enough to understand the applied research. And this applied research method is to be used whenever we have classified our aim, which falls under the research by purpose. Let's see what other method we can use to carry out research by purpose. Now it says this is evaluation research method. Again, it should not be confused with the applied method, but it appears to be quite similar. The word evaluation itself indicates us that some kind of evaluation has to be done. If you just read the slide, it will make it clear to you. It says, this type of research is used for evaluative purposes. It seeks to examine the usefulness of a project or a program. Previously, we had talked about some problem only for which a theory has been propounded. Here, it is to examine the usefulness of a project. It's a complete project now, or programs, certain programs. They may be belonging to any field of life. It may be natural sciences, social sciences, maybe literature. It may be life-oriented things, or it may be day-to-day problems that we are confronting. It says, the purpose of evaluation. Now from here onward, you get the message. The purpose of evaluation, research is to facilitate decision making that ultimately we have to do regarding the relative worth of two or more alternative actions. Now here we find that difference which comes between the applied research method and evaluatory or evaluation research method. Here we don't have one single theory. We have two minimum, or maybe three, or maybe even more than that. And those methods or those theories are to be evaluated, and then their comparison is to be done with the other methods or the alternative actions, and resultantly, as we studied in the last method, we have now fresh data which is available to us through this evaluatory method, and that data we'll use for evaluation again and to reach one single method which may be useful for us. So remember it, It is to facilitate decision-making by evaluating two or more actions or alternatives that are available to us. I'm sure by now this must be clear in your minds. Let's see what other method we can use for the research classified under this heading of purpose. It says research and development. Now, this is the term being very commonly used these days in the field of research and in every field for that matter. Let's read it to understand it more clearly. The major purpose, again, you see this word purpose, and after this, he'll tell you what's the real aim, what's the crux of this method that he is going to explain to you. The major purpose of research and development effort is not to formulate or test theory. Now here it differs with both or the methods that we have studied earlier, or even including the basic research method. It's not testing a theory that has already been propounded or that has already been formulated or the work has been done on that. So the first clear difference between this and that method is it's not to formulate or test theory, but to develop effective products for use in various fields. The difference is very clear here. It's not the theory being tested. It's not another theory that is being propounded. No evaluatory work is involved. What you have to simply do is develop effective products. For what? For use in various fields. For example, we have to, let's say, carry out research on the human health. For the human health, millions of products have been developed by the scientists who deal with the physical health of human beings. For diagnostic tests, the tests through medication, observation, administration of certain injections, and then watching the reaction, and they are on that day by day. This is one example. IT is the second example. What are the useful products? For example, for the children to ensure that they develop interest, they enjoy the jugglery or magic of the IT, and they learn it also. So, the products like PlayStations for the children or identical things have been produced. So not to go into much greater details, very simple thing is, it's not testing some theory, it's not creating some theory, it's not trying to decide whether the theory is useful or not. Simply it has to produce, its production now, certain things or gadgets or products concerning or covering any field of knowledge, health, atmosphere, space technology, whatever, which are useful for various fields of life. An other method that we can use for research by purpose is the action research. Now remember, the first word is giving you very fair ideas to understand the methods. Like we said, basic method, applied method, evaluation method, and research and development method. Here it says action method. And what's action method? Let's read it. It says, action research is focused on immediate application, not on the development of theory or on general application. Now here he has taken out all those things that we have discussed before this. It says it's immediate application. Here you don't have the time, or your purpose is not to formulate a theory, not to test a previous theory, no evaluations, but it's an immediate action. Now remember, the immediate is the key word in this type of research. It places its emphasis on a problem here and now in a local setting. Remember, it says its emphasis is to address a local problem which is existing, and it demands our immediate attention to resolve it as quickly as possible to avoid the further damages or to avoid the enhancement or aggravation of the problem. It further says its findings are to be evaluated in terms of local applicability, not universal validity. Now that is another big difference. You see, we have a system in this room, and if something, God forbid, goes wrong and some problem come up, we have to take an immediate action to eliminate that problem instantly or as soon as possible. The second difference is that this type of method is used when we have to resolve the local level problems. Now this problem may be pertaining to only this room, or only to the studio, or only to our classroom, or only to the transmission, and it has got nothing to do with the universal validity. No theory, and we are not trying to create or formulate a theory which should be followed in future also as a general rule, or it should have its converse at universal level. So the biggest difference between all the previous methods and this method is that it is to address an immediate problem that crops up, number one. Number two, it only is restricted to the local level and it doesn't go beyond that. And number three, its aim is not universal application of those principles or that research which we conduct, but only to address the problem that has immediately occurred. I'm sure it's self-explanatory. Let's move ahead. These methods which we have explained, and only these should be applied, or one of them should be selected, maybe all of them are required and combined together, and not a single method used in isolation. Well, it can be used in isolation also sometimes, but it's not essential. We may have to correlate and make use of all the methods that we've talked about when we are carrying out research by purpose. So that is one type of classification, and here we come to the end of research by purpose. The next type of classification of research that we'll discuss today in our lecture is research by approach. What do we really understand by research by approach is? What's our specific approach? Now here we're not concentrating on the method, or we are not concentrating on the purpose, the first priority is not that. The first priority is our approach. How do we really want to approach the problem or the aim that we want to achieve? So we call it research by approach. So there are two types of approaches in the research. Although many new things are coming up, many new concepts are coming up, there are disagreements also of the researchers on these things. But so far, what's being taken as standard, I'm just trying to convey it to you because it's just part of your crisis management curriculum. That much you have to learn. We're not getting into controversies or the disputes or the details, what's to be seen and what's not to be seen. So by approach, if you see the slide, there are just two clear approaches which we use to carry out research. One is called the qualitative approach, and the second is the quantitative approach. And these you must have studied a lot, so I'll not resort to greater details. We save some time for some better thing. However, we'll just have a quick glance on all possible features of these two approaches. I've already talked to you that whenever some terminology is used or the first word appears, always try to break the words and understand the meaning. It will facilitate your assimilation and your better understanding of the concept. Now first, when it says qualitative, now remember, the qualitative is from the word quality. So it makes very simple. When you are using the qualitative approach, you are concentrating on finding the quality or on focusing the quality. And when you are using the quantitative approach, this is from quantity. Here you are focusing on quantity. So it says qualitative is a text-based research. This is the one big difference. It's a text-based. It does not have many mathematical figures. It doesn't have huge quantity of numbers, figures, calculations, etc., etc. Understand that it's text-based. Quality can only be expressed in the shape of a text. Whereas, you go to the quantitative, it says, quantitative approach is a numbers-based research. Now here, basically, your aim is to find out the quantity. The quantity can only be told in terms of measurement, in terms of counting, or in terms of weight, volume, or whatever, but you have to use the mathematical figures and you have to use the numbers, whereas in the qualitative approach, the numbers are not there. It's just an expression, it's just an illustration, it's just a description. But here, it's more of counting, more of ratio telling, more of mathematical things. Like, you take sample of some water and you want to study whether the water is drinkable or not. When you analyze it in the laboratory, you find out what all elements are there and what's their quantity. You have to tell that quantity. And that quantity will dictate whether it is drinkable or it is undrinkable. Let's have a little more comparison to understand these things better. So there are certain features that distinguish both these approaches, the qualitative approach and the quantitative approach. And all these features have been put there on the slide. We'll talk about them in brief. It says distinguishing features. So first of all, what are the features which are very significant in qualitative approach? It says the first thing is that qualitative approach, it has extensive narrative data. Extensive narrative data, as I've already talked to you. It narrates. You want to talk about the quality of education in a university, in a college, in a school, etc. So you can't say what's the number of students, how many books they have, what's the number of hours, etc. You just have to tell what is the quality of the people, the students, the pupil being prepared by that very institution. Are they well equipped with the contemporary knowledge? They lack scientific knowledge, or they have certain vacuums in religious things. They have better values, they are well mannered or not. This is all qualitative. Likewise, if you have a wheat grown in the northern Punjab or in Balochistan, you find the difference in terms of quality. Which one is better? It's even perfumes. It's good in eating, in cooking or baking or whatever. These are qualitative things. Quality of the fruits, quality of human beings, quality of education, quality of hospitality, all these things. No data, but more narration. What's the second point? It says, many variables intensely studied. Now, it's not all that simple thing. When you come to quantitative, your job is made easier. You just either count the things, or weigh the things, or measure the things, and you tell the quantity, or you tell the ratio, or you tell the proportion. But when it comes to find out the quality, then many variables are to be discussed. And those variables, again, they have to be narrated and explained. To groom up the personality of a person, to make him a well-rounded personality, there are 101 variables that we have to discuss and that we have to take into consideration, and it's all explanation and narration and description and text. So this is the second significant feature of the quality research. The third point is soft data. I'm sure there's no need to tell you what soft data is. And soft data is required for this. The next point, long span of time. Now, it doesn't take minutes, hours, or days. It really requires a very long time. In various societies, people have various eating habits, various wearing habits, walking styles, different sports, different dishes, different edibles, different family setups, different mannerism. Why is it so? If we want to get into it, it's not job of one day. But if you have to do salt analysis, you only have to enter the chemistry laboratory and just go through the salt analysis process, and the result will be right there. So it's time-taking to study the behavior of human being, to study the changes coming now with the passage of time, to study the threatened values or replacing values or certain substitutes which are absolutely contrary to the values and 180 degrees different. To study this, it will require time, and it will require tremendous expressive data, text or narration. The next point is no interventions and no controls. When you are trying to study the qualitative aspect, there is no control in your hands. When you are studying the quantitative things, of course, the control is in your hands, and many variables you can control, many aspects you can control. You can intervene wherever you want, whatever way you want, but as far as the qualitative study is concerned, you are handicapped that you cannot intervene and you cannot control most of the variables. For example, if you want to study what kind of cinema people watch, what kind of movies people watch, how are you going to study? You have to go through all that process of research that we have been discussing before, and the sequence, etc. But you can't tell the people not to watch the film for one day. You can't tell the people who are in one cinema house to go to another cinema house because you want to observe their behavior. You cannot change that crowd that visits a particular cinema house every day. It's not possible for you. So you are only on the receiving and observing end. You can't tell the land to produce another kind of crop for you. You cannot compel a society to stop their certain behavior for some time. You cannot tell a university to change its students for one day and have another set of students. They can't do it. It's not possible for you. You can't do it to a business organization. You can't tell them to have another product because you want to study them. No. So the qualitative research is very delicate, very sensitive. Control is not in your hand, and interventions are not in your hand. Variables are there, and it's a very lengthy process. It requires command at least over three things. One, your ability to express. Two, your patience to spend a lot of time. And three, your skill to do your job as it would demand tremendous patience, or it's not a job of one day. So my dear students, today we have studied the classification of research. First, we studied the research by purpose. We are now studying the research by approach. In research by approach, we said that we have two types of approaches, qualitative and quantitative. Today, we have talked about qualitative approach, and we have seen its salient features. Inshallah, in the next lecture, we'll proceed further and we'll talk about little more about the qualitative approach and then on the quantitative approach. Till then, with all my love, with all my best wishes, with all my prayers, till the next lecture, I say you Khuda Hafiz. Inshallah, we'll meet in the next lecture again. And by then, you must have remembered all these things. Allah Hafiz.